He's been depressed. All of a sudden, he can't do anything.
Why are you depressed, Alvy?
Tell Dr. Flicker. It's something he read.
Something you read, huh?
The universe is expanding.
The universe is expanding?
Well, the universe is everything, and if it's expanding, someday it will break apart, and that will be the end of everything.
What is that your business? He stopped doing his homework.
What's the point?
What has the universe got to do with it? You're here in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is not expanding.
It won't be expanding for billions of years yet, Alvy. We've got to try and enjoy ourselves while we're here, huh?
In a video I did in January, as I approached the milestone age of 45, called Death on the Horizon, I went over how I was experiencing an Ingmar Bergman frame of mind, this deep and meaningful way of looking at the world. Partly because I was reaching 45, partly because of the time of the year, because it's a bit of a downer winter, this being January, and partly because I'd experienced a few deaths a bit close to home in my personal life, and it's sort of that had developed into me thinking more about death and mortality, to the point where I sort of focused on that for a lot of the year, and so the year sort of developed where the theme of change dominated, and my frame of mind changed from the Ingmar Bergman deep and meaningful frame of mind to the Alvy Singer frame of mind. Now, Alvy Singer is this character played by Woody Allen in Annie Hall, and he's this character full of fear and paranoia and angst about life itself and the world around him. And that's sort of the frame of mind I had for much of the year, where the reminders that I saw of death and mortality were sort of me projecting onto things, really what I wanted to see, on the basis of how the year really started and took shape. Now, with the theme of change, we seem to have this belief that we know the world, that there's some sort of fixed permanence to the world around us. It's basically a construction. It's a construction both that we make and that's made around us by the wider culture. But what we tend to do a lot of the time is we fix on a particular part of our lives. Now, we had a visit today from a family friend who we hadn't seen for 10 or 15 years, and she's in her mid-60s, and she said that on the inside she still thinks like an 18-year-old. Now, when I think like that, I think that I just think like a 24, 26-year-old. You know, that seems to be the age that I sort of fixed at, the age of grunge and the early days of the internet as a mass medium, where it was just hitting the universities. But what you do when you do that, I think, is you overlook the changes that that have taken place in you and the world around you. You know, and that you have changed as a person. I remember, for example, my mom mourning celebrities and prominent figures, and me mocking her years ago when I was a kid. And yet, all these years later, I now find myself doing the same thing my mom used to do, in that when a prominent figure dies, sometimes I'm a bit taken aback by it. And that's partly because they represent part of the world we know, part of the world we've become accustomed to and got used to. And when they go, so does that part of that world. And it's yet another thing we've really got to adapt to. And adapting to all these aging influences that come more and more thick and fast the older you get, as I've been told countless times. That is one of the challenges of life, because we seem to go through life thinking nothing changes, and yet everything does. 10, 20 years, God, in the blink of an eye. I finally got round to watching the Beatles anthology again for the first time since it was first broadcast in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I watched some videos around it on YouTube, and there was one with George Harrison saying something like the years between 17 and 57 had just gone. They just disappeared. They went so quick. And it can be quite frightening when you think in those terms. Like, you look back at how quick the past, say, 10, 20 years seem to have gone. And you project that forward and you think, right, I'm 46 nearly. In 20 years I'll be nearly 66. In 20 years after that, another blink of an eye, I'll be 86. And it's just like, wow. And again, this is a Selby Singer frame of mind. But really, it's like a lot does change in you and the world around you. I remember games. I used to be really into games and good at them as well. But now I'm lost. It's like I've not kept up with it, and I've lost track. I used to love playing football games, and now it's just all about strategy. I'm not interested. I just want to kick about. But the same with cars. It'll be in 2 years' time. It'll be 30 years. 30 years. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. The aging process is such a mind bender. 30 years since I passed my test. But then, in your mind's eye, it's like it was yesterday, but you look at videos of it or photographs of it and they look so dated. And, the amount of cars on the street now is phenomenal. The amount of parked cars, because virtually everyone's got a car in virtually every house. The cars parked on the street now, you have to navigate through all that wherever you drive. More change to adapt to. The internet as well. It's like, go back 20 years when I pretty much was fixed in many ways, and the internet was hitting the universities, and it wasn't the mass medium it is now. We sort of all knew it was going to be massive back then, but now we sort of take it for granted, and we don't. Looking back, we don't realise maybe just how much has changed as much as what we maybe should. And one of the things the internet has done for us is it's given us this shared platform of social media, of things like Facebook, where we can have this shared experience of growing old together and comparing grey hairs in areas where there shouldn't be grey hairs, for example. But obviously it needs improvement. It isn't what it should be, and it's not as enriching as what it could have been. But the story's not done and dusted on it all. But what it could do is it could offset the epidemic of loneliness for us, those of us who have adapted to it. So we won't have to go through what a lot of older people in this generation of older people are having to go through at the moment. Partly because of technology, partly because of the culture of youth that taps into all that tech. As for the people who haven't adapted to things like Facebook and the internet, it's a different story. But for those of us who have, that may be a good thing. But even though we might avoid the epidemic of loneliness, we're still going to have to face more change. That's something that's not going to go away. That's a constant. And I just look back and I think of all the times I used to look at older people and think they were somehow incompetent. Why do they cling on to this world that's gone and that was no good anyway? Which I suppose most generations think. Maybe not this one, because things are so bad at the moment. But my generation, I'm pretty sure, did. It's just adapting to it all, I suppose. Then again, another thing you have to adapt to is your health. It just gets better, doesn't it? Adapting to changes in that. I mean, you get more reminders. The injections I said I was going to have in my last video, I've been having injections in my eyes throughout the year, and I'm going to need more ones because appointments were botched and so my eyes deteriorated, so it's got to be I've got to have more injections again. The good thing is I've given up smoking, so and that being a factor in your eye health, that could be a good thing. Pills, medication, I'm off the fat pills, so I should lose loads of weight in the coming months, and don't I need to? And also there's a prospect, I'm told, of in the near future having all these pills reduced quite drastically, which again will be good for offsetting concerns about adverse effects of these things, not least in terms of lessening your life expectancy. But even so, it's still a drag. So what's the upshot? What's the upshot of all this negativity? Well, it could be that as I approach the next milestone, which is 50, this is just something that people in their mid-40s naturally go through, a lot of people. They unwittingly start preparing the groundwork by going through various psychological trials to like just adapt to the aging process. Or it could be, which I think is also likely, that all this is conspiring to tell me something, that despite the fact that people are dying off in my personal life and in the wider culture, despite the world that I thought I knew dying off sort of thing, and all the change that seems to get more and more difficult to deal with, it seems to increase the older you get. And despite the fact that your health seems to get more delicate the older you get, that it's all taking place or conspiring to tell me something despite or because of all of it, to say you got to start taking care of yourself. You know, that might be the upshot of all this. You know, to start preparing for older life sort of thing by living a healthier life. I remember this book called The Book of Ages by Desmond Morris. This book where I think it was 2 pages for each year of life, where Morris would have these snippets of stories about prominent people at each year, which sort of said this is what to expect at this year of life. I mean, one of the older ones, I think it was Duke Ellington, said something along the lines of, if I'd have known how old I was going to get, I'd have taken better care of myself when I was younger, on the basis of thinking that, you know, things do catch up with you. And things will, I think, if I don't start taking better care of myself. You know, I gave up smoking in August, not meaning to, but I took up vaping, and then smoking just became something I didn't need anymore. But I'm not making the most of that. you know, I'm not reaping the full benefits of having given up smoking. And so now may be the time to do that. You know, sitting around not doing that much physically isn't that healthy. You know, I walked around Merry Hill doing some Christmas shopping the other day, and after 20 minutes I was flaking out. Now, I can remember 20 years ago when I used to be able to walk around there for hours and not think twice about it. So, you know, another you know, hint that it's time to make changes, and positive ones at that. So I'm thinking of joining the gym. I've joined the gym before, but I've been smoking then. I've tended to have a rowing machine every decade of my adult life, a good one too. But what I'm thinking is find a cheap gym and just crack out 20 minutes on the rowing machine or something a few times a week, and then just build myself up, sort of thing. Not interested in the weights, but just capitalise on the fact that I don't smoke anymore and that, you know, I could be healthier. So there's the upshot. It could all be just down to, you know, what we go through at this time of year. You know, the gyms do seem to know that this is the time of year where everyone starts thinking, right, I've got to make changes, New Year's resolutions and all that. But this seems to be more than a New Year's resolution. And if anything, you know, that Alvy Singer frame of mind has got to go.